Hello, welcome to today's tutorial. Today we'll be painting Secret Weapon Miniatures Urban Streets Tablescapes. We begin by priming with Vallejo Model Air Base Gray. As you can see in this tile, there's a blemish from the manufacturing process. This is only in the color underneath in the plastic and does not affect the three-dimensionality of the actual tile. As you can see here, as I paint over it, the blemish goes away. Here I begin my highlights with Vallejo Model Air Pale Blue Gray. I begin by highlighting the center of the sidewalk tiles, working from the center of each section of concrete and usually spiraling out. I do this in an inconsistent pattern, giving some variations in light and dark shades of gray. This will create some interesting variance to the eye as you look at it. Next, we begin dirtying up the craters using the Army Painter War Paints Oak Brown. I do this in a star pattern starting at the center crater working way outwards to simulate the streaks from debris flying out from the blast. Next, I add the char marks to craters with Vallejo Model Air Black. I do this in the same pattern as I did with the brown, but I'm using about a 1:5 paint to thinner ratio so that it applies more as a transparent ink, allowing the brown shades to go through. I'll also drag out the streaks from this much farther, as the flaming debris flying from the crater will create scorch marks along the ground as it flies out. Here, I go over the largest cracks in this pavement with black. This to add some depth and shadow to them. Next, I touch up all of the metal areas with the Army Painter War Paints gunmetal. I like using this metal because it can give a very nice dark iron and steel look to finish anything that goes on with a number of washes. As you may have noticed, I tend to paint a lot of these objects from different angles. This is because it's much easier for me to draw the brush from left to right than it is to push it from right to left or even draw it up and down. So many times I'll rotate the tiles 3, 4, and even double back up at odd angles of 45 degrees so I can hit those specific spots without creating any kind of overstrokes on unwanted painted areas. One of the techniques I use to limit brush strokes while painting by hand is to thin down my paint about a 1:2 ratio with paint to paint thinner, the same thinner I use in my airbrush. It goes on very nice, and its viscosity is a little bit less than water, but a little bit more than alcohol. When it dries, it usually leaves a brush-free area. Now it's time to get dirty. I'm using Secret Weapon Wash's Concrete. Use this more as a shade than an actual wash. I'm going over large, broad areas, but mostly staying around to areas and edges near cracks. This gives a yellowish gray tinge to most things it goes over, and it does look like real worn concrete when it dries over the light gray applied earlier. begin by masking off the center of the road for applying our yellow stripes. I measure dead center on both sides of the table using watermark to mark where it is. Then I will apply my 1/4 inch masking tape along the middle. As I apply my 1 inch masking tape on each side, I will constantly recheck at the 1/4, half, and 3/4 mark to ensure that the tape does not deviate while I applied it. Even despite this, one of these tiles wound up with a 1/8 inch deviation. It is unnoticeable in tiles by itself, and when it's lined up with the other tiles, it is a bit of a bothersome piece. In retrospect, I should have done this step after I applied the blue-gray paint. Having applied it after I've done all the weathering and tinting effects with the washes, I did have to go back and do a lot of retouching work to fix what the yellow paint has covered over in terms of weathering and other materials such as metal and craters. The reason why I use 1 inch on both sides is to prevent any overspray from the bright yellow paint I applied later on. The bright yellow paint I'm using is the Demonic Yellow by the Army Painter War Paints. I really did not like the way this color turned out. I really should have gone for a mixture of this with orange to get a more realistic yellowish orange stripe effect. Now I have to clean up the yellow stripes. I water down my base grade in a 1:10 ratio of paint to paint thinner and apply it as a wash in the cracks. As I said earlier, I should not have done the stripes after I'd done all the weathering, instead I should have done them before the weathering effects. This particular step was very tedious, took me about 4 hours alone to get it fixed correctly. Now I began to weather the metal with Secret Weapon Wash's Armor Wash. I apply the wash directly to the metal bit and then I stipple around the metal surfaces. This gives an uneven look to it and gives a very realistic rust pattern once all is said and done. And finally we finish weathering the metal with AK Interactive's Wash's Light Rust. This is an enamel wash, and when it dries, leaves a very light, powdery rust look to it. I apply it in pretty much the same manner as before, doing one large pool and then stipling out to air the areas in the metal. While it does look like I'm using smooth brush strokes, I'm actually doing very fine tapping as I go along to get the inconsistent, pulled up bits of a watery rust look. Once the painting was complete, I applied a matte clear coat to everything. This gave it a very consistent reflectivity to it, so a lot of the brush strokes you see on the roads that are a result of different qualities of matte, satin, and glossy paints goes away. And here we have a look at the individual finished tiles. I realized that a lot of the four-way intersections and flat spaces were not included in the tutorial. This is because I shot and filmed with just the straightaways first before I painted the rest of them to get my methods down. It took me about 15 hours to paint the original 4 tiles, but once I got my methods down, painting the remaining 8 tiles for the first half of this set only took me about 5 hours of labor time. That being said, the set as a whole, which is 24 tiles, I think can be improved by losing 2 of the 4-way intersections, including 2 more of the street sections. Overall, I'm very happy with the set. Thanks for watching, have fun, and enjoy your painting.